People of the internet! Welcome back to another video. It is I, Don Thomas, back in here with another one. As always, folks, the likes, the comments, the subscribes have all been greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for the support on this channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, folks. I got a video pulled up here. It comes from NBC News, in which it's entitled, Former Surgeon General Murthy warns that social media is shredding our youth's self-esteem. Very interesting topic. Very interesting topic. Of course, I've been on social media for some years myself. I have seen the transitions and the shifts between the different social media platforms, from long form to short form, and different, content styles and this, that, and the other. And this is a topic, of course, that always seems to rise to the top in terms of the impact that social media is having specifically on the younger generation, on young girls and beauty standards, and on young boys and masculinity and things of that nature. So, of course, we can see, of course, that it's fair to assume that change is always going to be inevitable when we're dealing with social media and just the trends that are happening in our world. I think this video is going to dive into the effects that that's having more so on our younger generation. Let's get some insight. I'll share my thoughts. Of course, I encourage you guys to share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let's get into it.
And when you were Surgeon General, you actually went on a listening tour all across the country to talk to families about what they were experiencing. Why is loneliness hitting young people so hard? What did you find?
Well, there are a few things that have been happening. One is just over time, we have just moved around more. We change communities, change jobs. We tend to leave the people we know behind. We also find that over the last half century in our country, participation in the kind of organizations that used to bring people together, faith organizations, recreational leagues, service organizations, has all declined. But what I worry about for young people in particular is the impact that technology is having on their social connection. We tend to think, oh, kids are on social media, that's great because they're connected to one another. But no, we have to recognize there's a difference between the connections you have online and the connections you have in person. And as more relationships have shifted online, we're realizing that, number one, more kids are struggling with this intense culture of self-comparison online, which is shredding their self-esteem. A lot of them are trying to be somebody that they're not online, and they actually don't have as many friendships in person as we all need. So you put this all together, and what you see is escalating loneliness and isolation. And I'll tell you this, the people who know about this most are young people themselves, because they would tell me all the time how lonely they were. One student that I talked to at a college, as I was traveling the country, he said to me, how are we supposed to connect with one another when it's no longer the culture for people to talk to each other? And I had him repeat the question because I wasn't sure I heard him right the first time, but he's saying it's no longer the culture for people to talk to each other. And I saw that on college campuses. The first college I went to, I walked into the dining hall and it was quiet. And I remember the dining hall being really loud in college.
Yes.
But everyone is on their devices, their ears are plugged, with their earbuds, and they're not talking to one another.
Very interesting observation. Shout out to the good folks over at NBC News, of course. This brother shared his observations in terms of some of the things that he's witnessing within the young youth. Loneliness epidemic. We've spoken about that on this channel before as well too. The male loneliness epidemic, or just the loneliness epidemic in general, that people are experiencing. Specifically within the younger generation, very interesting finds, man, that social media is actually doing the contrary, right? It's, as opposed to, it was originally proposed to us as a way to stay connected, family members and lost friends and this, that, and the other. And yeah, you could still say that it is doing that to some degree. But on the psyche of the young adult, the beauty standards that a young girl might feel less than or inadequate of, based off of just cultural norms, is definitely, I could see how it would have an impact on the younger generation. I think about that a lot, man. Again, of course, somebody that's fairly tapped into the internet space. Of course, I spend a decent amount of time, just for work or whatever the case is, on the internet. But of course, I've developed myself in confidence and self-esteem, right, at my big age, right? So I, of course, and other adults that may be watching as well too, may not feel like they feel the blows, the negative side effects of too much social media. But of course, to some degree, I know we're all affected. But of course, this video in particular is specifically talking about that, the signs that social media is shredding the youth's self-esteem. So for the older folks, older people that, of course, are a little bit more solidified in their being and their essence, whatever the case is, in their own self-identity, wouldn't necessarily feel the blows of that. But for our younger generation who's still finding themselves, who's still trying to figure out, their strengths and weaknesses, what they like, what they don't like, I could see how one could fall down the rabbit hole of feeling inadequate when you're looking at hyperinflated egos and personas online 24/7, and now you feel like you're inadequate because you don't live up to the dream or the facade that somebody else on social media has built for themselves, right? not feeling pretty enough, not feeling strong enough, not feeling rich enough, not feeling, smart enough. Whatever the case is, I do see how, again, on the effect of the young adults, our Gen Zs, our middle schoolers, our high schools, whatever the case is, I do see how social media can turn to a negative effect or a negative tool that you could say that would have one finding themselves in isolation, not necessarily knowing how to form inhuman relationships and communication with the cases. I thought it was interesting. This brother mentioned, of course, a couple of things. Going into a college cafeteria, the refact is what we used to call it. I guess the refact, the cafeteria with a dining hall, and seeing the kids were not talking. Kids were, of course, on their phones and had earphones in. And I remember in my short run in college that it was popping in there. Yeah, we still had phones, of course, and everything, but it was a very noisy place. I can't imagine walking into a college dining hall that's silent. It was very active, loud music, conversations, people. It was a very social setting. So to know that it's the complete opposite, it's quiet, in a dining hall is kind of alarming in itself. And then, of course, just the young adults just not knowing how to form community. I think he was saying it's just not the social norm right now to form relationships in person. We do build online communities. We do, the swipe left, swipe right can find some level of, engagement, compassion, whatever the case is, with strangers online. And it feels like our society now is making that the new norm as opposed to forming real relationships with people that you might know in real life. So, again, folks, these are just warning signs, level of awareness that we should all take heed to. Again, if you're a parent who has young ones at home, take these things into consideration. See to it that your teenager is not glued to their phone 24/7. That they are still being able to develop the social skills needed to just be a functioning adult here in the real world. Encourage them to go outside. Encourage them to be a part of clubs and groups and things of that nature. Camaraderie against humans can't be something that falls to the wayside. You see what I'm saying? I feel like I see how, in the long haul, if we continue at the rate at which we're continuing, where all our relationships are solely through a screen, I could see how that would continue to move the human race and our society further and further apart in a time that I feel like we should be moving closer and closer together, right? Take these things into consideration, folks. Take into consideration how much time you're spending on social media, whether you're a young adult or a grown person. Take into consideration the effect of too much scrolling and, the subtle comparisons that we may or may not be doing consciously or unconsciously when we're scrolling through our timelines, watching our peers, our family members, strangers, influencers, and things of that nature. Always encourage you to have a strong identity in self. Understand your values so that way you're not easily swayed by the influences, again, consciously or unconsciously, that you come across on social media. And see to it that, okay, if you've mastered those skill sets and being confident in yourself, whatever the case is, be mindful that other people may or may not have been doing the work in that area of their lives in terms of that personal development. All things to take into consideration, folks. Of course, these are my thoughts. I encourage you to share yours down in the comment section below. As always, the likes, the comments, and subscribes all been greatly appreciated. I will catch you on the next one.